Before you decide whether this story is worth your time, let me tell you one thing. My children didn't leave me on the street. They didn't abandon me completely. They dropped me at a care home and drove away without looking back. I watched their car disappear, holding a small bag and a heart full of questions. I thought that was the end of my story. I was wrong. I still remember that morning very clearly. The sky was pale, and the air felt heavy, like it knew something painful was about to happen. My children told me we were going on a short drive. They said it would be better for me. They said I would be taken care of. They said many things that sounded gentle, but felt sharp inside my chest. I trusted them. Why wouldn't I? They were my children. We stopped in front of a large building with quiet windows and a simple sign outside. A senior care home. A place I had only heard about, never imagined living in. They helped me out of the car. One of them carried my small suitcase. Another one avoided my eyes. I smiled, trying to stay calm, trying not to embarrass anyone. Inside, the smell was clean but unfamiliar. The walls were plain. The voices were low. Everything felt temporary, except the fear growing inside me. They signed some papers. They spoke to the staff. They nodded. They smiled politely. I stood there, holding my bag, waiting. When I turned around, they were already walking away. I called their names, softly at first, then louder. They didn't stop. The door closed behind them, and the sound echoed in my heart. That was the moment I realized I had been left behind. The room they gave me was small. A single bed. A narrow window. A chair by the wall. I sat there for a long time, staring at my hands, trying to understand how a lifetime of love could end in one quiet goodbye. The first night was the hardest. The silence felt different there. No familiar sounds. No voices I recognized. Just the slow ticking of a clock and the quiet breathing of strangers behind thin walls. I cried silently, not because I was weak, but because I was confused. Had I failed as a mother? Had I loved too much? Or had time simply changed everything? Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Life in the care home moved slowly. Meals were served on time. Medicines were given. The staff was kind enough. But kindness from strangers never feels the same as love from your own children. I watched other residents receive visits, flowers, hugs, laughter. I smiled for them, but inside, something broke a little more each day. My children didn't come. Sometimes I checked the front desk, pretending I was just walking. Sometimes I sat by the window, hoping to see a familiar car. Nothing. I learned to stop expecting. To pass the time, I started doing small things. Helping others. Listening to their stories. Sharing pieces of my own. At night, I talked to myself, reminding myself that I was still alive, still breathing, still worth something. One afternoon, a volunteer came to visit. She was young, cheerful, and full of questions. She asked me about my life. About my children. About what I used to do. For the first time in a long while, someone listened. Before leaving, she placed a small pamphlet on my table. It was colorful and simple. Something about a community lottery fundraiser. I didn't think much of it. I had no money to waste on dreams. Still, that night, I held the paper in my hands longer than necessary. Not because of the money, but because for a brief moment, it made me feel like life hadn't completely forgotten me. I folded it carefully and placed it inside my drawer. I didn't know then that this small, forgotten piece of paper would soon change everything. That pamphlet stayed in my drawer for days. I didn't open it again. I didn't think about it much. At my age, dreams feel dangerous. You learn not to expect too much, because expectations hurt more than silence. But one afternoon, when the care home felt quieter than usual, I took it out again. The paper was slightly bent from being folded so many times. It talked about a small community lottery. The prize amount looked unreal to me, like something meant for other people's lives, not mine. I smiled to myself and whispered, what difference would it make anyway? Still, Something inside me said, just try. I used a little money I had saved. Not hope. Just curiosity. I filled out the form slowly, carefully, as if each word mattered. Then I handed it in and forgot about it again. Life went back to its routine. Mornings were quiet. Afternoons were long. Evenings felt heavy. I helped where I could, listened to others' stories, and learned to sit with my own thoughts. Some nights, I still cried, but not as often. I was learning how to survive abandonment. Weeks passed. Then one day, the manager of the care home called my name. Her voice sounded different. Careful. Almost excited. She asked me to come to her office. My hands trembled as I walked. At my age, unexpected news usually brings fear, not joy. She closed the door gently and asked me to sit. Then she smiled. She told me I had won. At first, I didn't understand. I thought she was talking about a small prize. A voucher. Something symbolic. But when she said the amount, my ears rang. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might stop. I had won the lottery. Not a fantasy kind of rich, but enough to change everything. Enough to never worry again. Enough to be free. I sat there silently, tears rolling down my face. Not because of the money, but because for the first time in years, life had spoken back to me. News spreads fast when money is involved. My children came the next day. They walked into the care home smiling, carrying gifts, hugging me tightly like they never let go. They called me mom with a sweetness I hadn't heard in years. They asked how I was. They said they missed me. I looked at their faces and searched for the people I raised. I saw strangers wearing familiar expressions. They talked about bringing me home, about family, about taking care of me properly now. They spoke quickly, nervously, like people afraid of losing something valuable. I listened quietly. Then I spoke. I told them I was grateful for their visit. I told them I was healthy. I told them I was finally at peace. And then I told them something they didn't expect. I wasn't coming back. Not because I hated them. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I had learned something important in this place. I learned that love should not arrive only when money does. I chose to stay where I was respected, where my voice was heard, where my presence was not a burden. I chose to use my money to help others like me, to support this care home, to live with dignity. They didn't understand. They were angry, confused, hurt. But I was calm. For the first time in a long time, I was calm. I moved into a small, comfortable place of my own. Nothing fancy. Just clean, warm, and quiet. I bought books. I planted flowers. I donated. I helped. I lived. Sometimes my children call. Sometimes they don't. And that's okay. Because my happiness is no longer waiting for someone else's approval. If you are listening to my story, remember this. Your parents are not investments. Your grandparents are not responsibilities to be delayed. Love them while they can still hear your voice, while they can still hold your hand. Because life has a strange way of teaching lessons, and sometimes, it teaches them too late.